A profile picture changed on Facebook. The same face she had mourned for 8 years stared back at her from a different account, with a different name and a completely different life. The wedding ring he wore in the photo wasn't hers. The discovery was made in Savannah, Georgia. Marine Sergeant Andrew Pearson, age 34, had been declared KIA during a classified operation in Afghanistan in 2015. His wife, Rebecca Pearson, had stumbled across the profile while searching for an old high school friend. The formal military ceremony had been held at Arlington, a folded flag placed in her trembling hands. The sealed casket, they told her, couldn't be opened due to the nature of his injuries. Rebecca had clutched their 4-year-old daughter's hand as they lowered what she believed was her husband into the ground. Andrew had been the kind of man who made breakfast every Sunday morning without fail, chocolate chip pancakes for their daughter Emma, and black coffee with 2 sugars for Rebecca. He collected vintage military patches and would spend hours organizing them in albums while telling Emma stories about each one. The night before his final deployment, he had written individual letters to both of them to be opened if he didn't return. Rebecca had read hers so many times over the years that the creases had begun to tear. "Take care of our little girl, and remember that my love doesn't end even when I do," he had written. His voice had been the last thing she heard each night for years after his supposed death. Saved voicemails she would play just to remember the sound of him saying, "I love you." But the Facebook profile showed a man named Daniel Morrison, living in Calgary, Canada. Same scar above the right eyebrow, from when Andrew had fallen from a tree as a boy. Same crooked smile that had made Rebecca fall in love 16 years ago. Could a man who had received a full military burial somehow be alive and living under a new identity hundreds of miles away? The military police had come to her door that rainy April morning in 2015. "We regret to inform you," the phrase that collapses worlds. They explained that Andrew's unit had been ambushed. His body recovered days later. A closed casket ceremony was recommended due to extensive injuries. Rebecca had accepted what they told her. What choice did she have? But now, staring at the unmistakable face of her husband on her computer screen, a cold realization washed over her. What exactly had she buried 8 years ago? When Rebecca clicked through the profile photos, her hands began to shake. There he was, her supposedly dead husband, standing beside a Christmas tree with a woman and 2 young boys. The most recent photo was dated just 3 weeks earlier. The woman had commented, "7 amazing years with you, Daniel." 7 years. 1 year after Andrew Pearson had supposedly died in combat. Had her husband chosen to disappear, or was something far more sinister at play? Rebecca immediately contacted the military liaison officer who had handled Andrew's case. Commander James Walsh seemed strangely unsurprised by her call. "Mrs. Pearson, I understand this must be difficult. I'll have someone come by to discuss this with you." The tone in his voice set off alarms. Not shock, not confusion, but something that sounded like containment. Why wasn't he surprised to hear that a dead soldier might be alive? That evening, 2 men in suits arrived at Rebecca's door. They identified themselves as Department of Defense officials, but showed credentials too quickly for her to verify them. "Mrs. Pearson, what you've discovered is part of a classified situation. We need you to cease all investigation into this matter immediately." They explained nothing about whether Andrew was alive or dead. They simply took her laptop and asked her to sign a non-disclosure agreement, which she refused. After they left, Rebecca noticed a black SUV parked across the street. It would remain there for weeks. Who was watching her and why? Unable to trust official channels, Rebecca reached out to Andrew's former squad mate, Michael Torres. When they met at a diner 40 miles outside of Savannah, Torres looked over his shoulder every few minutes. "Listen, Rebecca, there were things about that mission that didn't add up. 4 of us went in, supposedly only 2 came back, but the debrief was handled separately. We were told never to discuss it." Torres lowered his voice. "Andrew was working with intelligence officers sometimes, separate from us, special assignments." He pushed his coffee cup away. "The body they recovered, I never saw it. None of us did. Could Andrew have been recruited for some covert operation that required him to disappear even from his family?" A week after meeting Torres, Rebecca found her house had been searched. Nothing was obviously missing, but things were slightly out of place. The box where she kept Andrew's letters had been moved. Her computer had been tampered with. When she mentioned this to Torres, he stopped answering her calls. His social media went dark. His mother, when Rebecca finally tracked her down, said Torres had suddenly accepted a private security position overseas. The timing couldn't be coincidental. Who had the power to deploy a former Marine so quickly, and why did it happen right after he spoke to Rebecca? Rebecca hired private investigator Marcus Dalton, a former FBI agent with security clearance. Using his connections, Dalton discovered that Andrew's unit had indeed been in Afghanistan, but the operation was registered under a special access program. This goes beyond normal classification, Dalton explained. These programs are compartmentalized to the extent that very few people know the full scope. When Dalton attempted to access Andrew's death certificate, he found something peculiar. The document had been amended 3 times, with each version showing slightly different details. In my experience, Dalton said, multiple amendments to a death certificate usually indicate something's not right. Using facial recognition software, Dalton confirmed that Daniel Morrison and Andrew Pearson were the same person, with 99.7% certainty. The Canadian address listed for Morrison led to an apartment building owned by a shell company, which traced back to another shell company, which ultimately connected to a government contractor known to work with intelligence agencies. The web of connections suggested something far beyond a husband abandoning his family. Had Andrew been recruited, coerced, or was he hiding from something dangerous enough to justify leaving his wife and daughter behind? 4 months into her investigation, Rebecca received an anonymous package. Inside was a thumb drive and a note that said only "Watch alone." The video showed Andrew, filmed in what looked like a hotel room. "Becca, if you're seeing this, it means you found me, and you're in danger now too. What I'm involved in, I didn't choose this. They gave me a choice that wasn't a choice. They said they would protect you and Emma if I did what they asked, but only if you believed I was dead. I can't explain everything, but powerful people are moving money and weapons, and I saw something I shouldn't have. My death was the simplest solution, but someone vouched for me, said I could be useful. I've been working deep cover since then." He looked away from the camera. "The new family, it's my assignment, my cover. It's not real. None of it is real except you and Emma." The video cut off abruptly. Rebecca played it 17 times that night, her emotions cycling between relief, rage, and confusion. Andrew was alive. But what had he become? 3 days after receiving the video, Rebecca noticed the black SUV was gone, replaced by a different vehicle, a dark blue sedan with tinted windows. The surveillance hadn't ended. It had simply changed hands. But whose hands? The government officials who had taken her computer? The people Andrew was investigating? Or another party altogether? Rebecca decided to reach out to journalist Claire Westfield, known for her investigative work on military cover-ups. Westfield agreed to meet at a public park, where they walked continuously to avoid being overheard. "What you're describing has happened before," Westfield explained. "I've documented 3 cases of specialized operators who were killed, only to be redeployed under deep cover. The families are never told. It's considered a matter of national security." Westfield paused. "But here's the unusual part. Typically, these operations run through official channels. The fact that Andrews reached out to warn you suggests he's either gone rogue or he's caught in something unauthorized. Either way, this puts both of you in an extremely precarious position." Westfield helped Rebecca set up secure communications and introduced her to a network of military families who had experienced similar situations. Through these connections, Rebecca learned that a classified operation codenamed Obsidian Veil had been running since 2014, involving joint intelligence work between multiple agencies. Several operators involved in Obsidian Veil had been officially declared dead, only to resurface years later under different identities. Was Andrew part of this operation, or was something else at play? Rebecca began receiving hang-up calls. Her mail arrived opened. Twice she spotted the same man following her at the grocery store. Emma, now 12, mentioned that her teacher had asked strange questions about her father during a parent-teacher conference. The pressure was mounting, but Rebecca refused to back down. Using the secure channel Westfield had established, she sent a message to the Facebook account belonging to Daniel Morrison. It contained a code phrase only Andrew would recognize, the inscription they had put inside their wedding rings, "Beyond stars and shadows." 2 days later, she received a reply, "The light remains." It was him. He was communicating. A coordinated plan formed. Through encrypted messages, Andrew explained that he had been forced to infiltrate a network of defense contractors, diverting weapons to unauthorized paramilitary groups. His death had been orchestrated to insert him into this operation with a new identity, but after years undercover, he had discovered that some of the officials running the operation were themselves compromised. "I'm gathering evidence," he wrote. "When I have enough to ensure our safety, I'll find a way out. But until then, any direct contact puts you at risk." Rebecca asked the question that had haunted her for months. "Is your new family real?" His response came hours later. "My cover is as a widower who remarried. Sharon is an agent too. The boys are her nephews who appear occasionally for photographs. Nothing about this life is real." Private investigator Dalton uncovered financial transfers linking Commander Walsh, the liaison officer who had handled Andrew's death, to offshore accounts that received funds from the same defense contractors Andrew was investigating. The commander who had handed Rebecca a folded flag was possibly involved in the very corruption Andrew was working to expose. The layers of betrayal cut deeper than Rebecca could have imagined. 9 months after discovering the Facebook profile, Rebecca was approaching her front door when a woman stepped out from behind the hedges. "Mrs. Pearson, I'm Sharon Morrison," or that's what they call me. It was the woman from the Facebook photos, Andrew's supposed new wife. "We don't have much time. Andrew's cover has been compromised. They know he's been communicating with you." She handed Rebecca a passport and documents. "You and your daughter need to disappear. Tonight. Andrew will find you when it's safe." Before Rebecca could process what was happening, Sharon added, "The operation is burned. Someone high up in DOD is involved. Trust no one from official channels." That night, Rebecca and Emma left their home with only what they could carry. Following Sharon's instructions, they drove to a motel in Charleston, where they met a man who provided them with new identification documents. "Andrew arranged this," the man said, before disappearing. For 6 weeks, Rebecca and Emma moved from location to location across 5 states, using cash, staying off social media, and changing phones regularly. Emma, showing remarkable resilience, asked fewer questions than Rebecca expected. "Dad's alive, isn't he?" she said one night. "That's all that matters right now." Meanwhile, journalist Claire Westfield published the first in a series of articles exposing aspects of Obsidian Vale, carefully omitting details that would endanger Andrew or Rebecca. The response was immediate. The Department of Defense announced an internal investigation, 3 officials were placed on administrative leave, and Commander Walsh was found dead in what was ruled a suicide, though the circumstances were questionable. 3 months into their life on the run, Rebecca woke to find a note slipped under their motel room door. It contained coordinates and a time, 3 a.m. With Emma still sleeping, Rebecca used the burner phone to check the location, an abandoned fire watchtower in the Great Smoky Mountains, about 2 hours from their current location. Was it a trap, or the reunion she had been waiting for? After everything that had happened, could she risk Emma's safety on the chance to see Andrew again? The fire tower stood silhouetted against the pre-dawn sky. Rebecca parked a mile away and approached on foot as she'd been instructed, her heart pounding. The wooden stairs creaked under her feet as she climbed, one hand gripping the railing, the other holding the small pistol Sharon had given her, just in case. The platform at the top was empty. Rebecca waited, watching the forest around her, questioning every decision that had led to this moment. Then footsteps on the stairs, heavy, deliberate, a familiar rhythm she would know anywhere. Andrew emerged onto the platform, thinner than she remembered, with a scar that hadn't been there before running along his jawline. For a moment, neither spoke. 8 years of separation, of believing he was dead, of raising their daughter alone. It all hung in the silence between them. "Becca," he finally said, his voice breaking on her name. "I never wanted this. Any of it." She didn't move toward him. Not yet. There were too many questions, too much pain. Andrew pulled a flash drive from his pocket. "It's all here. Evidence against everyone involved, enough to ensure our safety once it goes public." He explained that the operation had started legitimately, tracking illegal arms sales, but had evolved into something darker. Certain officials had begun using Obsidian Vale as cover for their own profitable side deals. When Andrew discovered this, he became a liability. His choices narrowed to disappearing entirely or putting his family at risk. "They told me you and Emma would be protected only if I stayed dead to you. I believed them. I thought I was keeping you safe. Rebecca finally asked the question that had been consuming her. Why now? After 8 years, why risk contacting me now? Andrew's answer was simple. Because they're going to kill me anyway, my cover's blown. I'd rather die trying to get back to you than live another day in this lie. The evidence Andrew had gathered implicated officials at the highest levels of military intelligence and defense contracting. Working with Claire Westfield, they developed a strategy to release the information through multiple channels simultaneously, making it impossible to contain. Within weeks of the release, congressional hearings were announced. 5 high-ranking military officers were arrested. 3 defense contractors had their government contracts suspended pending investigation. The corrupt network began to unravel. After testifying before a closed Senate committee, Andrew was offered witness protection for himself and his family. New identities, new location, new beginning. Rebecca and Emma would have to leave their lives behind, just as Andrew had been forced to do years earlier. The parallel was not lost on any of them. As they discussed their options in a safe house outside of Washington, D.C., Emma, now 13, spoke up. I already lost Dad once. I'll go anywhere if it means we stay together this time. Her wisdom beyond her years settled the matter. Today, the family formerly known as the Pearsons lives somewhere in the Pacific Northwest. Andrew works from home as a software developer. Rebecca teaches at a local community college. Emma, now in high school, has joined the debate team. They look like any other family rebuilding after hardship. Only they know the full extent of what they've survived. The corruption within Obsidian Vale has been largely dismantled, though investigations continue into similar operations. Most nights, Andrew wakes with nightmares about his years undercover. Rebecca still flinches when she hears unexpected knocks at the door. Some wounds heal slowly, if ever. The military funeral held for Sergeant Andrew Pearson in 2015 remains on record. The grave at Arlington still bears his name. Sometimes people leave flowers there. Other service members honoring a fallen comrade who never actually died. The irony is not lost on the man who once carried that name. In his darkest moments, Andrew wonders if part of him did die in Afghanistan after all. The man who returned, the man who lied and lived under an assumed name, who missed 8 years of his daughter's childhood, sometimes feels like someone else entirely. Rebecca reminds him that surviving is its own kind of courage. That coming back to them, even after so long, was the bravest operation he ever undertook. For military families across the country, the Pearson case raised disturbing questions about operational transparency and the ethical boundaries of covert assignments. How many other deceased service members might actually be working undercover, their families grieving unnecessarily? The military has instituted new oversight protocols for special access programs as a direct result of the scandal, though critics argue these measures don't go far enough to prevent similar situations. In their new life, the family keeps mostly to themselves. Trust comes slowly after such profound betrayal, not just by Andrew, but by the institutions they had believed in. They've learned that healing isn't linear. Some days feel almost normal, others are shadowed by the weight of their shared trauma. Emma has started writing about her experience in anonymized form for a school project. Andrew teaches her self-defense on weekends. Rebecca has joined a support group for families affected by military operations, though she shares only carefully edited versions of their story. The Facebook profile that started it all, Daniel Morrison with his fake wife and borrowed nephews, has long since been deleted. But sometimes Rebecca finds herself searching for it anyway, a digital ghost that changed everything. The photographs that once shattered her world now exist only in a classified file somewhere in Washington. The man in those pictures has returned to her, changed, but still hers. Every Sunday, he still makes chocolate chip pancakes. Some traditions survive even the most extraordinary circumstances. What would you do if the person you mourned for years suddenly appeared online, living another life under another name? Would you risk everything to uncover the truth, or is it better to accept the comfortable lie? And how do you begin to forgive someone for allowing you to believe they were dead, even if they thought it was protecting you? For the family once known as the Pearsons, these aren't philosophical questions, but the reality they navigate every day. Their story reminds us that sometimes the line between hero and villain, between protector and betrayer, is as thin and shifting as the line between life and death itself, and that sometimes The greatest act of courage is choosing to trust again after that trust has been broken in the most fundamental way possible. What few people know about the Pearson case is that it led to one of the most comprehensive internal investigations in Department of Defense history. Operation Glass House, as it was codenamed, examined over 30 similar instances where military personnel were reportedly killed in action, only to be redeployed under deep cover identities. 12 of these cases showed irregularities similar to Andrew's situation. 4 involved operators who had been working under duress, threatened with harm to their families if they didn't comply. The web of deception extended across 3 continents and involved operations dating back to 2011. In the months following Andrew's testimony, Rebecca struggled with conflicting emotions. The joy of having her husband back collided with the resentment of lost years. "There were nights I couldn't look at him," she later confided to her therapist. "I'd remember holding Emma while she cried on Father's Day, or the time she had a father-daughter dance at school and went with her uncle instead. I know he thought he was protecting us, but those moments are gone forever." For his part, Andrew carried the weight of every missed birthday, every milestone. Every night Rebecca had cried herself to sleep believing she was a widow. The guilt was sometimes overwhelming. During their first month reunited, he would often sleep in their guest room, feeling he hadn't earned the right to his place in their bed. The investigation into Obsidian Vale uncovered a startling connection to defense contractor Meridian Global Solutions. CEO Victor Chambers had established a shadow operation within the legitimate company, using military assets like Andrew to gather intelligence that Chambers then sold to the highest bidder, sometimes foreign entities, with interests counter to American security. The operation had been brilliantly concealed within legitimate intelligence gathering, compartmentalized to such a degree that even most senior military officials were unaware of its existence. When federal agents raided Chambers' Virginia estate, they discovered a sophisticated command center hidden beneath the property, surveillance feeds from around the world, files on dozens of covert operatives, and financial records detailing millions in unauthorized payments. Most disturbing were the contingency files, detailed plans to eliminate operatives who became liabilities. Andrew's file included surveillance photos of Rebecca and Emma taken just weeks earlier. The family had been closer to danger than they had realized. Claire Westfield's reporting on the scandal earned her the Pulitzer Prize and multiple death threats. 6 months after breaking the story, her apartment was broken into. Nothing was stolen, but her research files were clearly accessed. A week later, her brake lines were cut. She survived the resulting crash with minor injuries, but got the message. With the help of the FBI, she staged her own retreat from public life, supposedly accepting a teaching position overseas. In reality, she continued her investigation from an undisclosed location, communicating with sources through encrypted channels established by Andrew. Emma's adjustment to having her father back was complicated. At 13, she had spent more years believing he was dead than knowing him alive. The father she remembered from childhood and the man who returned to them were different people. Andrew was quieter now, more watchful. He checked locks compulsively and sometimes disappeared into silence for hours. Emma found herself walking a delicate line between compassion for what he'd endured and resentment for his absence. The breakthrough in their relationship came unexpectedly when Emma found him sitting alone on the porch one night, looking at old family photos on his phone. "That's from my 7th birthday," she said, pointing to a picture he didn't recognize. "Mom threw me a surprise party. Uncle Mike dressed up as a clown. He was terrible at it." Andrew looked up, the pain evident in his eyes. "I missed so much," he whispered. Emma sat beside him. "Then stop missing now," she replied. "I'm still here." It was the first moment Andrew felt truly forgiven by his daughter, and it opened a door between them that had been firmly closed. The psychological impact of the deception extended beyond the immediate family. Andrew's parents, now in their 70s, had mourned their son for years. His mother had developed a heart condition that her doctors partially attributed to the grief. His father had stopped speaking about Andrew entirely, as though the pain was too great to acknowledge. When Andrew finally revealed himself to them, under controlled circumstances with federal agents present for security, his father collapsed. The reunion was tearful, confused, joyful, and angry all at once. "You let us think we'd outlived our son," his mother said through tears. "Do you know what that does to a parent?" The road to healing that relationship would be even longer and more complex than with Rebecca and Emma. Sharon Morrison, the agent who had posed as Andrew's wife during his undercover years, remained in protective custody for 18 months after the operation collapsed. Her testimony proved crucial in dismantling the corrupt network. What few knew was that Sharon had been placed in the operation under circumstances similar to Andrew's. Her brother, a diplomatic security officer, had been kidnapped and used as leverage to ensure her cooperation. Unlike Andrew, Sharon had no family who believed her dead. She had simply disappeared from her previous life, leaving friends and colleagues to wonder what had happened to her. Once released from protective custody, she chose not to return to government work. The last Andrew heard, she was working as a private security consultant in New Zealand, about as far from Washington, D.C. as one could get. Michael Torres, Andrew's former squadmate who had briefly helped Rebecca before being reassigned overseas, was found dead in his Kabul apartment 3 weeks after Commander Walsh's supposed suicide. The official cause was listed as an accidental overdose, though Torres had no history of drug use. His personal effects, shipped back to his mother in Arizona, included a sealed envelope addressed to Rebecca. It contained only a flash drive and a handwritten note: "Insurance policy. Use if necessary." The drive held copies of classified communications that corroborated Andrew's claims about the corruption within Obsidian Vale. Torres had been gathering evidence of his own, apparently anticipating he might become a target. Rebecca passed the drive to federal investigators, but kept a copy hidden as their own insurance policy. The psychological toll of living under a false identity for years had left Andrew with severe dissociative episodes. Sometimes, particularly when under stress, he would respond to his cover name or mention events from his fictional background as if they were real. His therapist, Dr. Elaine Montgomery, specialized in treating intelligence operatives and explained that this was not uncommon. "The mind adapts to survive," she told Rebecca during a joint session. "To successfully maintain a cover for years, operatives have to partially believe it themselves. It becomes a form of compartmentalized identity. With time and treatment, these episodes should become less frequent." For Rebecca, these moments were perhaps the most difficult to witness, glimpses of the stranger her husband had been forced to become. The investigation into Obsidian Vale revealed that Andrew had not been the only ghost operative whose family believed them dead. Lieutenant Sophia Reyes had supposedly been killed in a training accident in 2016. Her wife and young son had mourned her, only to learn 3 years later that she had been recruited into the same shadow operation. Unlike Andrew, Reyes had been a willing participant, believing the work essential to national security. The revelation that some operators had volunteered for assignments requiring them to abandon their families while others had been coerced created a sharp divide in public opinion. Were these individuals heroes making the ultimate sacrifice, or victims of an unethical system? Or worse, willing participants in family abandonment under the guise of national service? Congressional hearings on the matter became contentious. Senator Eleanor Winters, whose own son had served in Afghanistan, led the charge for greater oversight. "We're not just talking about operational security," she said during one particularly heated session. "We're talking about the fundamental contract between our military and the families who support those who serve. When we tell a family their loved one has died in service to this country, that information must be inviolably true." The resulting legislation, the Military Family Truth Act, established new safeguards requiring multiple levels of authorization for any operation involving staged deaths or extended deep cover assignments. As the Pearson family adjusted to their new life under witness protection, they discovered that the past has a way of resurfacing in unexpected ways. Emma, now attending a new school under a new name, developed a close friendship with a classmate named Zach. When Zach's father, a police detective, came to pick him up one afternoon, Andrew recognized him immediately. Staff Sergeant Ryan Collins, who had served in Andrew's unit before the fateful mission. The men locked eyes across the school parking lot, both freezing in momentary shock. Andrew turned away quickly, ushering Emma to their car, but the damage was potentially done. Had Collins recognized him too? Would he report the sighting to his former military contacts? The family spent 3 anxious days preparing for another possible relocation before Andrew received an encrypted message. "Your secret is safe. I have my own reasons to stay quiet." Garcia. The Collins connection proved both a risk and an unexpected blessing. After cautious initial communications, the two former comrades met at a remote fishing spot. Collins revealed that he had left the military shortly after Andrew's death, disturbed by inconsistencies in the official report. He had pursued a career in law enforcement, partly to gain skills that might help him uncover the truth someday. "I knew something wasn't right about that mission," Collins told Andrew. "The timeline didn't add up. The recovery operation was handled by personnel I'd never seen before. Having an ally outside the Federal Witness Protection Program, someone who could watch for signs of surveillance or unusual activity, gave the family an additional layer of security that proved valuable in the months ahead." Victor Chambers, the CEO implicated in the corruption scheme, never stood trial. While awaiting extradition from the Cayman Islands, where authorities had located him 2 months after the scandal broke, he suffered an apparent heart attack in his villa. Medical reports indicated natural causes, but rumors persisted about poison or other forms of assassination. Had Chambers' foreign clients eliminated a liability? Had elements within the U.S. intelligence community decided he knew too much to risk a public trial? The truth remained elusive, but Andrew wasn't convinced it was coincidental. "People like Chambers have contingency plans," he told Rebecca, "and they have enemies on all sides." The financial trail behind Obsidian Veil led investigators to accounts in 7 countries, with transactions linked to illegal arms deals, political bribes, and even human trafficking operations. The scale of corruption suggested that what Andrew had uncovered was merely one branch of a much larger operation. 3 of the officials implicated in the scandal had connections to Operation Diamondback, a classified initiative in South America that had been shut down in 2010 amid rumors of ethical violations. The pattern suggested that the same network of corrupt officials had simply rebranded their operation and continued under new authorization, raising troubling questions about oversight within the intelligence community. 1 year into their new life, Rebecca received an unexpected package at her workplace, a community college where she taught under her new identity. Inside was a thumb drive and a note that simply read, "Still watching." The drive contained surveillance photos of their new home, Emma's school, and Andrew's daily running route. The message was clear. They hadn't escaped everyone's notice. When federal marshals analyzed the package, they found it had been sent from a post office in Calgary, the same city where Daniel Morrison had supposedly lived. Someone connected to Andrew's cover identity had tracked them down. The family was moved again, this time to a smaller town in Idaho. New names, new backgrounds, new caution. Andrew installed advanced security systems in their home and began varying his routines obsessively. Rebecca found herself checking rearview mirrors for tails and scanning faces in crowds. Emma, now 14, resented starting over just as she had begun to make friends. The strain began to show in their relationships. "This is never going to end, is it?" Emma asked one night after another security drill. The question hung in the air, unanswerable. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Sharon Morrison, Andrew's former cover wife, reached out through secure channels. The surveillance from Calgary connected to a former Meridian global contractor named Ellis Hargrove, who had escaped the initial roundup of conspirators. Sharon had been tracking him independently, maintaining her own investigation despite officially leaving government service. "He's working for someone new," she reported. "Someone with resources and a particular interest in keeping tabs on Andrew." With Sharon's intelligence, federal agents located and apprehended Hargrove as he conducted surveillance on a federal safe house, not the Pearsons' actual residence, but a decoy location. Under interrogation, Hargrove revealed his employer, Senator James Blackwood, chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee and supposedly one of the good guys leading the investigation into Obsidian Veil. The Blackwood connection changed everything. The senator had positioned himself as a reformer, promising transparency and accountability. In reality, he had been a silent partner in Chambers' operation for years, using his oversight position to protect their activities from scrutiny. With Chambers dead and the operation exposed, Blackwood had been working to identify and eliminate loose ends, including Andrew and his family. The evidence against Blackwood was substantial but politically explosive. Bringing down a sitting senator, particularly one as powerful as Blackwood, would require extraordinary measures. Andrew and Sharon devised a plan to lure Blackwood into revealing his connection to the remaining Obsidian Veil operatives. Using controlled leaks suggesting Andrew had maintained a hidden cache of evidence, they set up a meeting between Blackwood and an undercover federal agent posing as a former Meridian contractor willing to eliminate the Pearson family for the right price. The operation was high risk, with potential political fallout that reached the highest levels of government. If Blackwood realized it was a trap, he had the influence to shut down the entire investigation and potentially expose the family's new identity. The sting operation took place at Blackwood's Virginia horse farm. Federal agents monitored from nearby as the senator met with the supposed hitman, explicitly discussing the elimination of Andrew Pearson and his family. "I want confirmation," Blackwood was recorded saying. "The kind you can photograph. They've caused enough damage already." The arrest of a sitting senator made national headlines. President Kelsey addressed the nation, promising a comprehensive review of intelligence oversight procedures. For Andrew and his family, it represented the removal of the most significant threat to their security, but also reminded them that the past was never truly behind them. With Blackwood's arrest, several other conspirators came forward with plea deals, revealing the full extent of the corruption. 3 additional senators had received payments from Chambers' organization. 5 high-ranking military officials had facilitated the false death notifications and reassignment of personnel. The scandal reached further than anyone had initially suspected, suggesting a shadow operation that had existed alongside legitimate intelligence work for nearly a decade. The resulting reforms included the creation of an independent oversight body specifically tasked with monitoring special access programs and deep cover operations. For the Pearson family, the arrest of Senator Blackwood meant another relocation and another identity change, their third in 18 months. The constant upheaval took its toll, particularly on Emma. Her academic performance declined. She became withdrawn, spending more time alone in her room. When Rebecca found her researching emancipation laws online, the family reached a breaking point. "I can't keep doing this," Emma said during a tense family meeting. "I can't keep becoming someone new every few months. I don't even remember who I actually am anymore." Her words hit Andrew particularly hard. It was the same dissociation he had experienced during his years undercover. After much discussion with federal marshals and prosecutors, the family made a difficult decision. Andrew would enter a more intensive witness protection program alone, creating distance that would allow Rebecca and Emma to return to a version of their former lives. The separation was presented as a necessary sacrifice for their safety, but it felt to all of them like another death. A chosen one this time, but painful nonetheless. 2 months after Andrew relocated to an undisclosed location, Rebecca and Emma moved back to Savannah under modified identities. They weren't the Pearsons anymore, but they were closer to who they had been before the Facebook discovery that changed everything. Emma returned to her former school as a cousin of herself, a cover story explaining her resemblance to a former student. Some teachers recognized her, but maintained the fiction at the request of federal authorities. Rebecca found work at a different college, teaching the same subjects, but with a new name and fabricated employment history. They lived in a different neighborhood, in a house with advanced security features disguised as ordinary renovations. Weekly check-ins with their federal handler became monthly, then quarterly. Life developed a rhythm that almost felt normal. Almost. Andrew's absence was an open wound for both of them. Secure communications allowed for messages, but not video calls. Too risky for facial recognition technology that might be monitoring internet traffic. On Emma's 15th birthday, a package arrived containing a carved wooden box. Inside was a handcrafted bracelet and a note. "Made this with my own hands. When you wear it, I'm there with you." Emma wore it every day, touching it absently during difficult moments like a talisman. Rebecca received similar packages, small gifts clearly made by Andrew. Tangible proof that he was still there, still thinking of them, still part of their lives despite the distance. The separation was intended to be temporary, a year at most, until the trials of remaining conspirators were complete and the threat level reduced. But legal proceedings moved slowly. Appeals were filed. New connections were discovered that required further investigation. 1 year stretched toward 2. Emma started dating. Rebecca received a promotion. Life continued in Andrew's absence, as it had during the years they thought him dead. The difference now was hope, the painful, persistent hope of eventual reunion that sometimes felt more difficult to bear than the certainty of loss. 22 months into their separation, Rebecca received an emergency signal through their secure communication channel, a specific phrase that indicated immediate danger. Within hours, federal marshals arrived to relocate them. A data breach at the U.S. Marshals Service had potentially compromised witness protection records. Andrew had already been moved to a new location. Rebecca and Emma were taken to a temporary safe house in Tennessee, while authorities assessed whether their identities had been exposed. During this disruption, Emma made a decision. Now 16 and legally able to obtain a driver's license in many states, she left the safe house while Rebecca was sleeping. She took nothing but her ID, some cash, and the bracelet from her father. She left a note. "I'm tired of running. I'm going to find Dad. Don't worry, I have a plan." By the time Rebecca discovered her absence, Emma had a 12-hour head start. Federal marshals initiated a search, but Emma had been learning operational security her entire life. She knew how to travel without leaving an electronic trail. She knew how to avoid cameras. She knew how to disappear. What followed was 3 weeks of agony for Rebecca and Andrew. Their daughter had vanished, not taken by their enemies, but running from the very protection that was supposed to keep her safe. Federal resources that would normally be deployed for a missing teenager were limited by the need to maintain operational security. Rebecca wasn't allowed to file a public missing persons report or post Emma's photo online. Andrew requested permission to leave his protected location to search for his daughter, but was denied. The risk was too great, and he might lead threats directly to her if she was found. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Ryan Collins, Andrew's former squadmate who had recognized him in their previous location, contacted Rebecca through a secure channel Andrew had established. "I think I've found her," his message read. "She came to me. Said she remembered seeing me that day at school. She's safe." Collins had kept his connection to the family secret, even from his own department. Now he served as intermediary, arranging a secure meeting between Emma and federal marshals at a location of her choosing. The marshals expected to take her back to her mother. Instead, Emma presented them with a proposal. "I'm done hiding," she told them. "So is my family. We want our lives back." She had spent her time away researching legal options and consulting with a lawyer who specialized in witness protection cases. Her proposal was bold. The family would return to public life, acknowledging Andrew's survival and the basics of his story, but under the umbrella of an official presidential pardon for any classified information that might be revealed. They would become the public face of reforms to prevent similar abuses of power. Their visibility would become their protection, too many people watching for them to be quietly eliminated. The proposal reached Attorney General Melissa Chen, who brought it to President Kelsey directly. After consultation with intelligence officials and prosecutors, a modified version was approved. Andrew Pearson would receive a limited pardon covering his actions during Operation Obsidian Veil. The family would be permitted to resume their original identities with continued protection. In exchange, Andrew would serve as a consultant to the newly formed Oversight Committee, using his experience to help establish protocols preventing similar abuses of power. 3 years after Rebecca discovered her supposedly dead husband on Facebook, the Pearson family held a press conference on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. Andrew, now sporting a beard and looking older than his years, stood flanked by Rebecca and Emma as he addressed the gathered journalists. "My name is Sergeant Andrew Pearson. 8 years ago, I was declared killed in action in Afghanistan. That declaration was part of an unauthorized operation that separated me from my family against my will. Today, I am reclaiming my name, my identity, and my life." The story became national news, sparking renewed debate about the ethical boundaries of covert operations and the rights of military families. Life after public revelation brought its own challenges. Though the most dangerous conspirators had been imprisoned or killed, others remained at large. The family received death threats. Emma faced intense scrutiny at school. Rebecca's academic colleagues treated her with a mixture of fascination and wariness. Andrew struggled with public appearances, the years of operational security making openness feel dangerous rather than liberating. But they faced these challenges together, in the same house under their real names, a luxury that once seemed impossible. 6 months after the press conference, Andrew received a message from Sharon Morrison. She had located Victor Chambers' private server, hidden in a data center in Estonia, and still running automated protocols. The server contained the complete files on Obsidian Veil, including operations that had never been uncovered by official investigations. Most significantly, it revealed connections to similar operations in 3 allied nations, suggesting an international network of corruption that transcended national security agencies. The information was too explosive to release publicly. It would damage legitimate intelligence operations and international relationships. Instead, Andrew worked with a trusted FBI contact to ensure the information reached the appropriate authorities in each country, triggering quiet but comprehensive internal investigations. Today, 5 years after Rebecca discovered that Facebook profile, the Pearson family has found a new normal. Andrew teaches at a military academy, specifically instructing officers on ethical boundaries in intelligence operations. Rebecca has published a memoir about their experience that has become required reading in military family support programs. Emma, now in college studying international relations, leads a student organization supporting children of deployed service members. The family still maintains certain security protocols. Old habits die hard, but they do so by choice rather than necessity. The scandal fundamentally changed how deep cover operations are conducted within U.S. intelligence agencies. The Military Family Truth Act established strict oversight for any operation requiring deception of an operative's family. A special advocate position was created within the Department of Defense specifically to represent the interests of military families during operational planning. Annual reviews by an independent committee ensure compliance with these regulations. It's an imperfect system, but one that makes it significantly more difficult to abuse power in the way Andrew and others experienced. For the Pearsons, the most profound change has been internal. The years of separation, first through deception, then through necessary protection, altered their relationships in ways both subtle and profound. They are not the same family they were before Afghanistan. Rebecca is more independent, more assertive. Emma is more cautious, more politically engaged. Andrew is quieter, more reflective. They each carry scars from their experience, but they have learned to recognize and accommodate each other's wounds. On difficult days, they remind themselves that many families affected by Obsidian Veil never got their loved ones back at all. They are, despite everything, among the lucky ones. Last Christmas, an unmarked package arrived at their home. Inside was a folded American flag, the same one presented to Rebecca at Andrew's funeral years earlier. A note accompanied it. Found this in storage during an office clean-out. Thought it belonged with you. No signature, no return address. The family decided to burn it in a private ceremony in their backyard, a symbolic release of the past. As the flames consumed the fabric, Emma asked the question they had all contemplated at different times. Do you ever wish I hadn't found that Facebook profile, that we'd never known the truth? Andrew and Rebecca exchanged a look, 8 years of separation and 3 years of reunion hanging in the balance of the question. After a moment, Andrew answered, "Truth with pain is still better than comfort built on lies." It has become something of a family motto, a reminder of all they've survived and the value of the life they've reclaimed. The Daniel Morrison profile has never reappeared online. Occasionally, Rebecca still searches for it, a digital ghost that changed the course of their lives. Sometimes she wonders about the parallel universe, where she never saw that profile, never recognized that face, never upended their lives in pursuit of a truth that nearly destroyed them. In that universe, Andrew might still be living his cover, and she would still be a widow raising her daughter alone. It's impossible to know which reality would have been kinder. But as she watches her husband and daughter working together in the garden, arguing good-naturedly about the best way to stake tomato plants, she's certain of one thing. This difficult truth is better than the most comfortable lie.